infectious diseases, research, medicine, health. Welcome to Outbreak News Interviews. And now, broadcasting from the Outbreak News Skylar Studios in beautiful West Central Florida, here is your host, microbiologist and editor of OutbreakNewsToday.com, Robert Harriman.
Well, hey everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to Outbreak News Interviews. Now, the biotech company, Valneva, announced to the world this month about the promising work and progress on two vaccine candidates, one for the mosquito-borne virus, Chikungunya, and the other for Lyme disease. So joining me today to discuss these events is President and CEO of Valneva, Thomas Lingelbach. Mr. Lingelbach, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, so some pretty exciting news reported this month on these vaccine candidates. And I want to go ahead and start with the Chikungunya vaccine candidate, VLA 1553. Mr. Lingelbach, what can you tell us about the design and the technology of VLA 1553?
Yeah, so first of all, Chikungunya is an outbreak disease that is pretty much emerging and evolving. And as such, the vaccine industry is targeting really a protective vaccine for the prevention of chikungunya fever. Our vaccine candidate is pretty unique. We are using a live attenuated vaccine, which means that we are designing the vaccine that in a way that it can protect at least 5+ years for everyone above 1 year of age. Possibly the protection can even last longer than that. And this is the unique feature of our vaccine candidate, we are targeting a single shot only. And this would make a big differentiation in the final target population, which are people living in endemic areas and, of course, travelers traveling to areas where the disease is endemic.
Great. And some of the big news about this vaccine this week or this month was concerning the FDA granting fast track designation for this vaccine candidate. Mr. Lingelbach, what does that mean?
Yeah, the regulatory agency is granting fast track designation in order to support industry and help industry in accelerating development for diseases or areas of high unmet medical need, such as chikungunya. In our case, it means that we can have a more interactive dialogue with the regulatory agency, and that the agency is going to accelerate and expedite reviews and review processes for our development program.
Great. Now, the vaccine is currently in phase 1 trials. Now, not all my listeners are scientists, so they may not understand what phase 1 trials are. Can you explain what this is?
So basically, in the world of vaccines, and we are, Valneva is a dedicated pure-play vaccine company. In the world of vaccines, you have the classical phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials in humans. Those trials typically follow some trials in the so-called preclinical development phase in animals. So as soon as those phases are completed, the phase 1 is targeting safety. So the first objective is really to see whether the vaccine candidate is safe, because prophylaxis means you are dealing with healthy individuals. You're not dealing with patients, you're dealing with healthy individuals, and you expect a very good safety profile. And this safety objective is the primary objective of any phase 1 trial, typically around 100 subjects, 100 people who are involved in this phase 1 trial. And since we are talking vaccines, it means that the human body is expected to create protective antibodies following the injection of the vaccine, and hence what we are expecting is to see an immunological response. And this is why the phase 1 also includes the review of of immunogenicity titers. So basically to see antibody levels against the antigen that you give. And this is sort of indicative for a future potential protection. Not yet decisive, but indicative. And then it's being followed by a phase 2, which includes a larger cohort of individuals participating in the trial, where the final dosing and the final vaccine schedule, so whether you have 1, 2, or 3 shots needed to reach protection, are being examined. And then you have the phase 3, and the phase 3 typically is the final so-called pivotal trial, where you have in total, it can be up to 10,000 people, for example, in the case of our Lyme vaccine, where you really test in a ideally placebo-controlled setting field efficacy. Overall, you can, in the world of vaccines, you can expect that the total duration from the beginning of a phase 1 till the end of phase 3 is going to be in the region of 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. And Mr. Lingelbach, when do you expect to be able to release the results of the phase 1 trials?
We are a couple of days away from the release. We have been a bit delayed because of the holidays, but we expect to release the data very, very early in the new year.
Oh, very exciting. And of course, the other big news is your Lyme disease vaccine candidate, VLA15, which is headed into, or maybe it's already in phase 2 trials. Is the technology of this vaccine different from that of the Chikungunya vaccine?
Yeah, excellent question. Yes, of course, it's very different because in the case of Chikungunya, we are talking about a virus, and hence the vaccine is targeting so-called neutralizing virus antibodies. In the case of Lyme, we are talking about bacteria, or to be precise, spirochetes. And here we have used a complete different technology in order to address Lyme disease. In addition, in the case of Chikungunya, we talk about a single germ or virus in this case, a pathogen. Whereas for Lyme, we are dealing with a whole variety of different Lyme species that we need to tackle in order to protect against this devastating disease. And hence, we need to develop a so-called hexavalent vaccine or multivalent vaccine, so covering a whole range, in our case, 6 different species of Lyme borreliosis, so that the vaccine can protect against all the major species of Lyme disease prevalent in the Northern Hemisphere.
Okay. Now, I understand that this is going into phase 2 trials, and there's a lot of people interested in this vaccine. And this is the only active vaccine program in clinical development against Lyme right now. How long until you expect some data on this particular study?
Well, so as you rightly mentioned, we have initiated phase 2 for Lyme. We are conducting a pretty big phase 2. So we are expecting around 800 people to participate in this phase 2 trial. We are going to have study sites in Europe as well as in the United States, in areas where Lyme is endemic and other areas where Lyme is. And overall, we expect this trial to last about 2 years. And if this trial comes out successful, which is what we hope, then we will start immediately the phase 3 program, and we are very, very much accelerating the development of this desperately needed vaccine in order to potentially have something that can protect against Lyme disease in about 5 years on the market.
Yeah, sounds like some very challenging work. And Mr. Lingelbach, any final thoughts on these vaccine candidates or any other work Valneva is doing?
Well, we are one of the very, very few mid-sized, fully dedicated vaccine companies and we are targeting niche indications that are probably not attractive for the big pharma companies in the world, but we see our key capabilities in areas of high unmet medical needs, in vector-transmitted diseases, and in so-called niche indications, and that we are very, very excited and fully dedicated to work on those indications for now, Lyme and Chick, and maybe in the future others to come.
Very good. And for the listener, I'll link to the Valneva website for people that want to check it out for themselves and see the work of Valneva, and when the podcast is published. And I want to thank you, Thomas Lingelbach, for sharing this great news with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure.